We acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet and pay our respect to the elders past and present. This is a hybrid event, and we will be taking questions at the end from those in the room and online. Those online will need to write their questions in the Q&A box, and we will read them out. And I'm sorry, we will not be taking live questions today. So just write your question on the Q&A box if you have one. First, we will have some opening remarks. And for the first one, I'd like to invite His Excellency Bapak Siswo Pramono, Indonesian Ambassador to Australia and Vanuatu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ridwaan, Jadwat, First Assistant Secretary, Australia Special Envoy to the OIC, and Professor Blane, Mr. Mohamed Hage, Dr. Eva Nisa, Adjunct Professor Peter McKenna, Dr. Arianto Patundru, and Mr. Muhammad Naim, and Excellency Head of Mission and High Commissioners. I recognize Ambassador Izzat, welcome, Ambassador Venturenauts, and of course, Ambassador Gary. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to acknowledge the Munawa people, the traditional custodian of this land, and pay my respect to the elders, both past, present, and emerging. On behalf of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Head of Mission Group in Canberra, I would also like to use this opportunity to convey our gratitude to Professor Blane and his team, as well as the organizers and the distinguished speakers for the contribution to our seminar today. I would also like to thank the fellow ambassador for High Commission and High Commissioners and College of the OIC, Head of Mission Group, for their valuable inputs and support to this our seminar. This seminar is a joint project of the OIC groups and the ANU. The convening of these seminars is part of the group mission, OIC group mission in Canberra, that is to enhance the understanding of Islam within the wider Australian society, and to strengthen the cooperation between OIC member states and Australia. The group itself consists of 25 ambassadors and high commissioners in Australia, out of a total 57 OIC member states. In today's seminar, we will discuss the emerging trends and challenges of halal industries in Australia and in the region. I believe that this topic is very important and timely, not only for the OIC member states and the Muslim community in Australia, but also for the Australian economy, business, and industries. As we are bracing ourselves against the global economic slowdown, we need to continue looking for and unleashing untapped economic opportunity such as the halal industries. According to the Dinar Standard, a Dubai-based research firm, in 2021, the worth of 1.9 billion Muslims spent around 2 trillion US dollar on Islamic faith-inspired industry. Despite the continued uncertainty and pandemics, the global Muslim spending in 2021 has reached 9% on Y-on-Y basis, year-on-year, growth from 2020, and is forecasted to grow by 9.1% in 2022. All these sectors expect travel have returned to the pre-pandemic spending levels by the end of 2021. The ABS census on 2021 shows that Australia has a relatively youthful Muslim population. It has over 800,000 Muslim population, the fastest growing faith-based community in the past 25 years. It is economically expanding and flourishing and offering lucrative opportunity for the Australian and regional market. In 2019, 2 years ago, Australia has the 4th largest exporters of halal food and beverages to the OIC countries, the 4th largest exporters. It's exported over 5.3 billion Australian dollar to countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, and the Gulf Cooperation Council. Australian halal meat is able to penetrate this market for it's known to be of high quality with similar pricing to others mainstream brands of meat or chicken. However, halal industry are not just about food and beverages. There are other two-way trade and services that we could explore, such as cosmetics, fashion, finance, pharmaceutical, media, and travel. Each of these sectors has its own unique challenges. I wish today's seminar could come up with possible recommendation to address those challenges for the advancement of halal industry trade and cooperation in Australia, the OIC states, and the region as well. Finally, I want to conclude my remark by sharing my confidence that as our interest in the halal industry increases, mutual respect and understanding in our plural society will inevitably improve as well. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Siswo. Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Ridwaan Jadwat, First Assistant Secretary, Southeast Asia Maritime Division, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dara Muna Dara Nanawal, Yango Gulanyin Nalawari Danayi, Nanawal Dara, Wangira Linjin Yin Marini Balan Bugarabang. May I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I acknowledge and respect their continuing culture, the contribution they make to the life of the city and this region. I would also like to acknowledge and welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be attending today's event. I'd like to offer my thanks to His Excellency Siswo Pramono, Ambassador of Indonesia, Heads of Mission from Organization of Islamic Cooperation member countries, and Professor Blane Lewis, Head of the ANU Indonesia Project, for organizing today's event, inviting me to deliver some opening remarks ahead of this timely seminar. Today's event is an opportunity to discuss the halal industry, but to also acknowledge the diversity and growing prominence of the Muslim community in Australia, which now totals over 813,000 people, including myself, my children, my wife, an Anglo-Australian who converted to Islam 19 years ago. Muslims in Australia are not the other, they are of this land, and Muslim Australians are a vital and integral part of the rich mosaic of Australian society. Freedom of religion and belief are central to our multicultural model, and in this country we come from every culture, every race, and every nation. When I migrated with my family to Australia in 1981 to escape apartheid in South Africa, I could never imagine standing here today as Australia's special envoy to the OIC and speaking about the growth potential of the halal economy. I've been fortunate enough to have served for 25 years in the Australian Foreign Service, including in my current role as head of the Southeast Asia Maritime Division, and to have had the opportunity, alhamdulillah, to become the first Muslim immigrant to serve as an Australian ambassador when I was appointed as ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, and Yemen in 2018. But my story is only one of millions of stories of immigrants from all over the world who now make up the patchwork of modern Australia. Within a historically relatively short period of time, given that our nation's story began at least 65,000 years ago with our first Australians, Australia has been enlarged in capacities, talents, and outlook by millions of men and women from every corner of the globe. And as the Holy Quran says, we have made you into nations and tribes so that you may know one another. And few people know that Islam's presence in Australia actually predates European settlement. In the early 16th century, Makassan fishermen from the East Indonesian archipelago were the first Muslims to visit Australia and trade with the indigenous Australian community. Prime Minister Albanese visited Makassar in June on his first bilateral visit as Prime Minister, and he spoke of the Makassan seafarers who sailed to Arnhem Land and had contact with the Yolngu people. The Makassan contact with our indigenous community left a lasting cultural imprint. It was a relationship built on trade and mutual respect, and it laid the foundation for the people-to-people contact that lays at the heart of our friendship with the people of Indonesia and the wider Muslim world. And as you all know so well, the halal industry is much more than a simple trade and investment opportunity. It is a way of life. It has been my way of life since I was born. Having the opportunity to speak to you today about the halal industry truly speaks to what modern Australia looks like in 2022, with all of its cultural and religious diversity. And it is within this context that Australia is so well placed to continue to capitalize on opportunities in the global halal market. Halal translates to permissible or lawful within traditional Islamic law, but many people equate halal as the absence of pork and alcohol, but it's much more than that. It's also about ethics and the way we treat people, both in our personal and our professional lives. The halal industry involves a sophisticated process of inspections and certifications that cross the whole supply and value chain. And halal certification has relevance across food products and pharmaceuticals and healthcare, as well as a myriad of other products and services. And as my wife Jessica said at the recent World Halal Business Conference in Melbourne, halal is synonymous with ESG principles, and its ethos encapsulates all approaches to a modern sustainable world. In a word, halal means sustainability. And if we can get sustainability right, then all other benefits flow economically, socially, and environmentally. I may be preaching to the converted in this room, so I think we can all do more to educate others and enhance understanding in the broader community and in the boardrooms of our corporations about the benefits that can be reaped from the halal market. Steady growth of the halal market is undoubtedly being driven by a large and growing Muslim population, with an increasing urge to adhere to Islamic ethical values relating to consumption. And globally, it's estimated that Muslims will represent 26% of the total world population by 2030. The Muslim population is expected to grow twice as fast as the overall global population, reaching 2.2 billion people by 2030 and 3 billion by 2060. And this burgeoning Muslim demographic globally means new and strong export opportunities for halal products, particularly across Southeast Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East. It's estimated that spending by Muslim consumers will reach $2.4 trillion by 2024, with food spending alone likely to account for over $1 trillion of this. The growth potential of the halal economy is a game changer for both traditional halal trading nations and also to non-Muslim halal newcomers. As a trading partner of many Muslim markets, Australia is committed to best practice in maintaining the highest standards of halal assurance so that consumers can have confidence in our halal products. We are experienced halal traders, and Australia's supply credentials of halal products to OIC countries is underpinned by strong domestic export regulation, clean and green domestic production systems, and world-class food safety standards. In short, Australia takes halal very seriously. We hope to build on this and do more to cultivate potential synergies between Australian businesses and others in wider Islamic markets. There is a lot we can do to further integrate and build complementarity in our halal supply chains. And we are hoping that this will just be the start of this process and that Australia can continue to be a beacon to the world in embracing diversity and the halal industry. Thank you very much. Shukran jazilan.
Thank you, Mr. Jadwat. Now let me invite Professor Blane from Indonesia Project to say a few words.
I promise this is the last set of opening remarks, so we'll get started soon. My name is Blane Lewis. I am the head of the Indonesia Project. I'm a professor here at ANU in the Crawford School of Public Policy. As many of you may or may not know, the Indonesia Project is a research institute inside the Crawford School of Public Policy. We are funded by DFAT, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of the Australian government, and have been funded by DFAT since 1980. So I'd like to acknowledge that and thank Ridwaan and his colleagues at DFAT for their support. It's our pleasure today to assist Siswo and other friends at the Indonesian Embassy to organize and co-convene this important seminar. So I'd like to thank Siswo for giving us the opportunity. I'd like to also thank Bu Widya and Prayoga, okay, for your assistance in helping us to organize this. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I'd also like to thank the members of the audience very much for showing up. This is a real coup for the Indonesia project. I don't think we've ever had so many ambassadors and deputy ambassadors attend one of our events. So we're very happy about that. Thanks very much for joining us. So let me leave it there, and I'll turn it back over to Achal, I guess, and we'll get started. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Blane. So now let's move on to the seminar. So our first speaker is Mr. Mohamed Hage. Is the President and National Chairman of the Australia Arab Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He will be speaking about economic and market opportunities for the halal industry in Middle East and North Africa. And he will share strategies for providing further resilience and supporting economic growth. Please welcome Mr. Hage.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. It's a great honor to be here today. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge the traditional people of the land. I also want to thank Your Excellency, Indonesian Embassy, also Mr. Ridwaan Jadwat for your efforts in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Organisation of Islamic Councils, and everyone who's here today. I was very excited when I was given this topic about the halal industry. And I thought, well, since this is a research centre, we may go beyond just the statistics. We may dig a bit deeper and look in the future and how we can actually improve this industry and make it better for what it is. So today, my seminar will be based on what we need to do to make this industry better. How can we make it better? And how can we actually embrace and empower it to actually be one of the leading industries, inshallah, going forward. Firstly, the Australian Arab Chamber of Commerce and Industry is the peak body of foreign investment and trade between Australia and the 22 Arab countries. And as we are all aware, as Mr. Ridwaan Jadwat said, Australia shares an important growing relationship with the Islamic world, but also with the MENA region as well. Today, we have some of the fastest growing economies across the Islamic and also across the Islamic world, and in particular in the MENA region. Today, we're seeing Saudi Arabia's growth generating over 7% and potentially being a $1 trillion economy. The UAE still remains the financial hub in the region, and also now has the highest level of foreign direct investment in any Western Asian country. And here's another statistic. Egypt has the fastest pace of startups across the whole MENA region, with many amounts of venture capital investments going into that market. These sectors, these industries, these growth are paving the way for new sectors and industries that will support the halal industry going forward. These sectors include artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing. They'll include things such as tourism. And these are sectors in which the halal industry should be focusing on going forward. But the trade should not be limited to one way. What we're seeing is 5 out of the 11 largest sovereign wealth funds across the globe are located in the MENA region. Foreign direct investment is important for the halal industry because it empowers industries and also ensures sustainability of economies. The halal industry needs to look at FDI moving forward. So as an industry, what does this mean for the halal market? Well, we see these great statistics where we're now starting to export billions of dollars of halal products into Southeast Asia, into the Middle East. What does this mean for the halal industry? We have to remember 2 important factors of the industry and the market. First is the core. The second is we need to defend that core as well. The The first is ensuring that term halal, what it means, the value that comes, the ethics, everything that comes with that term halal. But at the same time, we need to have processes in place, and we also need to be religiously compliant to defend that core at the same time. So one needs to be value driven, and the other needs to be also religiously compliant at the same time. What does that mean? Well, the halal industry needs to accept that it needs to go on beyond its obligation and expectations globally. This is very important. We need to actually customize products and services globally that provides solutions across industries, sectors, as well as geographies. Not just F&B, across all industries, across sectors, and also across geographies. We need to embrace leaders that can take challenges and convert them into opportunities. So what are the challenges? The challenges was the recent COVID-19 pandemic that we saw. These were challenges where the halal industry can convert this into opportunities. The supply chain challenges, the value chain challenges, the challenges we saw in many markets around the world. The world is moving. Consumers and producers are now finding it very difficult to be close together. What would happen is producers now, because of the supply chain disruption we've seen, are coming closer to consumers. The producer is coming closer to the consumer. We're also seeing a food security issue, high levels of food security that are becoming problematic globally. What does this mean for the halal industry? It means that a lot of manufacturing will be re-centralized within countries and within regions. Again, consumer coming closer to the producer. Economies will be a lot more centralized. We went through a period of globalization for many, many decades. Now, what we're seeing is economies looking to re-centralize and looking to engage a lot more with their regional partners. This is something the halal industry needs to be aware of. Why? Because the investment going into future-focused industries, such as advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence. This is where the halal industry can play its part in agri-tech, fintech, and throughout the whole process as well. It's very important. But there's also three key components that the halal industry must also be aware of. The first is a proper roadmap and a proper strategy. The roadmap and strategy needs to incorporate three key factors. Excellence, loyalty, and entrepreneurship. First of all, excellence. Without excellence, you don't have any loyalty from the customer. We must remember of the excellence that we deliver in the halal products that are manufactured, all the services that we provide. There must be a process as well as procedures or structures that actually adopt proper excellence, because this will have a range of benefits. It will increase the reputation of halal products. It will actually allow halal industries themselves to engage in economic recoveries. It will actually allow the halal industry to strive, be robust, and at the same time be competitive. But what's very important about excellence is that we also need to be profitable. We often forget that the halal industry, to be sustainable, needs to be competitive as well as profitable. It will also allow for shareholders to believe that they have a return, again, so there's shareholder value in that excellence as well. And excellence will deliver us and engage us as the halal industry to further be involved in the future of new products and services with non-halal products and services as well. The second is loyalty. Without excellence, you do not get loyalty. And in the halal world, there's two key themes that we need to look at when we talk about loyalty. Customer loyalty and the brand loyalty. The customer loyalty is already there, because the customer loyalty, as a halal product, consumers are willing to pay more. Consumers are willing to, so there will be repeat business for the halal product. There's over 1.5 billion Muslims around the world. both Muslims and non-Muslims will be prepared to pay the premium for a halal product. That's the consumer side. But the brand side becomes very important. The brand loyalty is based on trust. And this trust, we have to actually work on strategies and processes to ensure that we regain that trust in the halal brand moving forward. So with this trust, there'll be several key factors that will be important. The first will be dependency. The second, which I think is very important, will be understanding the emotional connection that halal has to products and services. The third, which I think is very important as well, is that we understand the superiority of halal and also social media awareness. This is very important of the trust of the brand. So why social media awareness? Today, we have an economy which is called the awareness economy. The awareness economy has been so quickly commercialized. What we're seeing is our future generations will be making decisions very quick. Our future generations will be making decisions within a minute to 2 minutes. TikTok is the perfect example. We must be aware of these particular structures within the halal industry. So this awareness economy, as an industry, we must empower positive emotions into that awareness economy. What we're currently seeing in the halal industry is within the halal industry, there is negative emotions that are being empowered by certifiers, by different things. And this is something very important for the halal industry. We also need to be aware that as we allocate capital into the halal industry, we also got to be aware of the allocation of time. And again, this is where social media is playing such a pivotal role in empowering either positive or negative emotions for this industry. The other one is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the will. It's the will that drives economics. It's the will that drives economic development. The halal industry to thrive needs two important things as well. It needs to be competitive and it needs to be profitable, because this will ensure its sustainability going forward. This is where we have to look at industries beyond just the F&B sector. We have to look at the industries that will actually complement the growth of economies and be part of those industries. So entrepreneurship is very important. The other reason entrepreneurship is important is because it fosters and embraces the SME market. The SME market is the cornerstone and the economic diversifier of most economies. It provides real economic value, and what it also does is it provides skills jobs. The thrust of the halal industry will depend on how competent our workforce is. This is critical. So how competent is the workforce of the halal industry? But then we have to go beyond this. We have to look at the retraining of halal, ensuring that we have adequate training in place, because this will support the SME market at the same time. Let me give you an example. In 2021, as the COVID-19 pandemic happened, New Zealand was short 50 to 100 butchers. New Zealand's halal industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They weren't short because they didn't have sort of a training program or vocational training. They were short because they could not allow migrants to come in to actually be involved in the halal process. This caused a major problem for the halal industry in New Zealand. So we must be aware of the skills, but not only in the F&B sector. We must plug into other sectors and industries and find out how we actually can complement with those particular industries and sectors. If we look at Islamic finance, we understand that's growing, but we have to also look at the other growth sectors, things such as fintech, agri-tech, renewable energy, artificial intelligence. This is what we have to look at, because this is going to be the future. And the future generations are very heavily focused on this. Then we have to look at, as I said, advanced manufacturing. If we are going to pioneer food and food processing and other sectors, we need to look at advanced manufacturing as well. So entrepreneurship starts to play a much more pivotal role in growing the halal industry globally. And we're seeing it. Just recently, we had a company out of Saudi Arabia get funded $36 million to provide zero commissions to those who purchase halal products to deliver them to their door. We also saw in Malaysia a $400 million allocation made to an e-commerce network. But these disruptions have come as a result of the challenges that we saw during COVID, and these opportunities have been taken as a result of the COVID disruptions that we've seen. We're also seeing other sectors such as pharmaceuticals, which have been very evident. We've seen other industries, other sectors, and this is very, very important for us to consider these sectors and what drives these sectors as well. Ridwaan mentioned ESG. ESG is a very important factor, And when we talk about ESG, you can see that countries as well as companies are highly focused on the environmental, social, and governance practices to ensure a sustainable future. But let's not forget that Islam has principles of social and environmental factors in it. Islam has principles of sustainability. The fact that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, be careful on the use of water. We see today how cautious water is. So sustainability is very important, but it's something that's been part of Islam for a long time. And yes, ECG does complement and converge with the halal industry practices. If we look at from food to plate as an example, and we look at the way they go through that food to plate process, we should be incorporating ESG on it. We should be on the forefront of recycling, because this is part of the Islamic principle anyway. I finally want to say that trade investment goes beyond just the exchange of goods and services. Trade investment also incorporates exchange of knowledge from one generation to the next. It is these type of organizations, the ANU, I must congratulate, that is engaging in this knowledge. The better of sectors, the better of industries, and the better for humanity. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hage. Next, I'll invite Dr. Eva Nisa. She is a senior lecturer in anthropology here at the Australian National University. She's also an expert in Islamic studies. And today she'll be speaking about development of thriving halal industries in Malaysia and Indonesia, and discuss the drivers of this growth and what it means for Australia. Please welcome Dr. Nisa.
Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you to ANU Indonesia project, the Indonesian Embassy, and also the Organization of Islamic Cooperation for involving me in this wonderful seminar. Thank you to His Excellency Dr. Siswo Pramono and Professor Blane for organizing this seminar. Honorable ambassadors, high commissioners, and deputy heads of mission from Indonesia, Malaysia, Algeria, Brunei, Palestine, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Lebanon. Honorable Mr. Ridwaan Jadwat. Ahlan wa sahlan, tasharrufna bihudurikum. And thank you to everyone who has joined us today, online and in person. This is the outline of my 15-minute presentation. I will begin this presentation by speaking generally about my research on the halal industry and also the current global Islamic economy indicator current ranking. And then this presentation will be divided into 4 main parts. In the first part, I will focus on the discourses pertaining to the Islamic resurgence and also halal lifestyle. And then I will move on to 2 case studies on halalization in Malaysia and also in Indonesia. I will connect these 2 to the Australian context. Having been inspired by Johan Fisher, halalization in this context refers to a major preoccupation with the proliferation of the concept of halal in a multitude of commodified forms. Therefore, through halalization in Indonesian and Malaysian public spheres, we can see ranges of halalized products like these pictures here. So from personal care like halal deodorant to halal hygiene like wrinkle releaser spray. There, bottom. Right, and then I'll end my presentation with some final remarks. Okay. As an introduction to my presentation, I would like to share a little bit about my research on the halal industry and the Islamic cultural economy. At the end of 2021, I won the Australian Research Council DECRA Award to conduct research on the current development of halal industry and also Islamic cultural economy in Indonesia and Malaysia. But before that one, in 2019 and 2020, I also conducted research on a research halal center in Malaysia, funded by the ANU Asia Pacific Innovation Program. Now, in this seminar, I will focus on stories about the current halal industry development in Indonesia and Malaysia, and we'll connect these 2 to the Australian context too. However, as the Australian context is not part of my main research focus, the links that I will mention are limited. First, let me elaborate on the intention to focus on Indonesia and Malaysia. Indonesia is, as we know, the world's most populous Muslim majority country with a population of around 229 million Muslims, or approximately 87.2% of the country's total population. And with its large population and the state of its economy, there is a vast and significant potential market for halal for advancing the Islamic economy and also developing halal industry in this country. Indonesia recently held H20, Halal 20, in this picture. Halal 20 in conjunction with the G20 summit, whereby Indonesia is the current host of this multilateral forum. Indonesia invited 105 halal certifying agencies from 44 countries across the globe for this event for H20, which is it was held from 17th of November until 20th of November. 20th of November, I think 19th of November, just lately. And Malaysia has long been recognized as the global halal industry's leading player, and the country has topped the GIEI. GIEI is the serve as the framework for measuring the global halal economy in the world. Let's see the GIEI current ranking. Here is the current ranking of GIEI. You can see the different performances. You could move this one. We can see the performances of the different performances of these 2 countries, Indonesia and Malaysia, and also other countries in 2022. Oh, thank you. It is Malaysia and Indonesia comes here. That's for the Islamic finance, but this one is for the global score. Malaysia and Indonesia comes fourth. Malaysia, despite a smaller Muslim population compared to Indonesia, maintains its great performance in its halal industries. Indonesian performance has increased significantly, evident from its fourth position in the GI ranking, where from 2014 to 2018, Indonesia's position was stagnant at 10th place. And even in 2017, Indonesia had slipped to 11th position. So the country is doing great for this year. And some of you might have heard many times that the global halal market is thriving, as also mentioned by our first speaker, Mr. Mohamed Hage. So what does it mean? The increasing growth of the halal lifestyle is part of a growing awareness of Muslims in expressing their Muslim identity, thanks to the Islamic resurgence in Muslim countries since the late 1970s and also early 1980s. And in addition to this, we also witnessed the rapid growth of the global Muslim population, the growing number of educated middle-class Muslim in many Muslim countries, together with the strong growth of household incomes and their enthusiasm in accentuating their Islamic piety by consuming halal products, have driven the governments in many countries to increase their commitment to halal industries. As a socio-cultural anthropologist, Darwin Ridwaan mentioned, quote, one of the most striking dimensions of economic development and the new middle classes in Asia has been its religious dimensions, unquote. In line with this is the importance of young generation, as also mentioned by our first speaker, millennials and Generation Z. They are young, digitally savvy individuals who can drive the economy. They are also more well-informed and well-connected to the world and eager to share what they know through lots of different social media platforms, including TikTok, as mentioned by Mr. Mohamed Hage. And Said Farouk, senior partner of Dina Standard, mentioned that, quote, 30% of the Muslim market share is still young, ranging from 14 to 29 years, unquote. So you could also see from these pictures, restaurants, ramen restaurants, some Japanese restaurants with halal logo, quite small in here, halal logo, and this one too, Japanese restaurant. So this is to attract increasing Gen Z's awareness of eating at halal certified restaurants. There are also increasing sushi restaurant chains that decided to go halal, like Sushi King in Malaysia in 2020. So the increasing awareness of the benefit of consuming halal products is also not only due to the religio-ethical reasons, but also health-related reason, which can appeal to non-Muslim consumers. In addition to the economic benefit to the country, political interests have also accompanied the government's focus on halal industry, through which they can boost their image in front of prospective pious middle class voters. This one is from kilisos.my. We can see here how things were different back then. This one is from the booklet from Melayu teacher in 1968. We couldn't imagine, there is an ad, Guinness Stout ad there in the Melayu booklet, Melayu teacher booklet. So of course, we won't easily find this kind of ad in that kind of booklet nowadays. Right. Okay, now let's link this halal fever in both countries to the state of the halal industry in Australia. Australia has always been interested in the halal industry, given the significantly large Muslim population in their neighboring Southeast Asian countries. Southeast Asia is home to about 25% of the world's Muslim population, or around 257.7 million people. And the figure is projected to increase by 683.8 by 2030. Therefore, it is not surprising if the region is often called the Muslim archipelago. If we broaden this picture to other countries like the Organization of Islamic Cooperation or OIC countries, which consists of 57 members, then Australia also has been the leading export player to OIC member countries. According to GIEI ranking, for example, as you could see here, Australia part of the top 10 countries with the highest score in the halal food sector, together with other non-Muslim majority countries like Russia, and then Singapore, and also South Africa. And it is also not surprising, given the critical position of Australia, that it was targeted to be the host of the World Halal Business Conference. The World Halal Business Conference's first international location, as mentioned by Mr. Ridwaan Jadwat. I was there too, and yeah, I know that you are also there and gave a wonderful speech, and your wife too. She's here. Yeah. And the WHBC was basically one of the largest gathering of the halal business leaders organized by the Halal Development Corporation, HBC, Malaysia. And according to Paul Sander, Minister Councillor and Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner, he said that one of the aims of WHBC is to identify commercial opportunities and business matching aimed at greater collaboration between Australian and Malaysian firms in the halal sector, unquote. Australia understands that Malaysia is an important market for Australia's halal exporters. Malaysia has long been Australia's second largest export market for mutton. Now let's move on to Indonesia. In the context of the Australia and Indonesia halal partnership, Indonesia's position is important because for many years, Indonesia has been Australia's largest export market for red meat, especially for cattle and also for beef offal. And also the fifth largest market for Australia's boxed beef. And understanding its potential, Indonesia's potential, while at the same time lagging behind its neighboring country, Malaysia, Indonesia has tried to improve its halal industry performance today. Today, the country has taken a top-down kind of approach to boost its ranking, and the top-down approach can be seen from the government's active pathways for halal, such as through the establishment of KNIKS, and the presence of Bank Syariah Indonesia, etc. So OIC released a report in December 2021 stating that Indonesia and Malaysia are among the largest market for halal food because they are among countries that have the largest Muslim population. At the same time, halal industry players like Australia, Indonesia, and Malaysia also face various challenges, which I cannot list in detail today. In the context of Australia, for example, despite its good performance in the halal food industry, currently, of the 25 halal certification bodies in the country, as listed by, you could see also some of the list over there, as listed by the Australian Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, only 7 of them are recognized by Malaysia's Department of Islamic Development, JAKIM, and also Indonesian Majlis Ulama or Indonesian Ulama Council, Indonesian MUI. And now my last slide, final remarks. I would like to briefly draw your attention to the issue of competition and standardization. In most studies on the halal industry, I have noticed that the GIEI ranking becomes the center of the starting point. This then sends a signal that the halal industry is always about competition. Indeed, in many countries, like Indonesia, for example, every time the government and civil society and also companies launch many halal initiatives, then the GIEI ranking is always mentioned at the start of their initiative. It's always quoted, and also as my presentation too, I started with GIEI ranking. And when I interviewed Harold Arvin Sahari, the Chief Executive Officer of the Halal Development Corporation Berhad in Malaysia, and asked about this competition, he widely argued that quote, if the gap between demand and supply of halal goods throughout the world is only left by maybe 10 to 15%, of course, the answer will be competition. We, Malaysia in this context, will compete fiercely with Indonesia. But we know that there will be many competition than adding to what we are competing at the moment. But we know that the demand and supply gap over halal products in the world is huge. It's about 80%. So we have that big piece of pie, more than enough for everyone involved. Okay, what about the standardization? In terms of the standardization, this is the place where religion has been used to amplify capitalism. And halal industry in many countries, including Indonesia, invites, and Malaysia invites us to think about the interconnectedness between capitalism, religion, and also the state. While early studies on halal industry and Islamic economy in general often complicates this issue, we have gradually witnessed how Islam and capitalism are seen as working together. This includes various initiatives emphasizing how religion can increase corporate productivity through the enforcement of Islamic ethics, of hard work and self-discipline, as also mentioned by Mr. Ridwaan Jadwat before. For example, this also has been studied by some anthropologists, cultural anthropologists working on Islamic economy, like Doromir and Patricia Swallow-White. And then the standardization issues is always repeated also many times as the main global challenge in the industry. If you check the GIEI, GIEI report carefully, then the universal halal standard or widely accepted or recognized halal standards are mentioned many times as one of the top growth challenges. And standardization is also related to the certification of halal. This, for many halal business players, has hindered easy cross-border halal supply chain connectivity, but we could discuss this one again later. Can we have universal standard for all the halal ecosystem sectors? With that question, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eva. Next, we'll have adjunct Professor Peter McKenna. Is a well-known business development expert, and he is the managing director of Venturenauts. And he will be exploring opportunities and challenges of the halal industry in Australia and demonstration of a possible halal industry development project based on blockchain technology. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. Many thanks to the Indonesian Embassy and the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation and the ANU for the very kind invitation to speak here today. It's a great honour to be here, and we're very excited by the huge opportunity, the halal industry, and how Australia can participate in that. My talk is in two parts. One is looking at opportunities and challenges, and the second part is looking at a couple of practical steps, initiatives we can take to actually do something. I'd just like to make an apology right at the outset. The real risk for a business person is to come in and start talking about statistics in Australia's premier research institute. And what's worse than that is following the Indonesian ambassador, DFAT, and these experts here. So I'm going to come up with some statistics. I think they may not be exactly like yours, but I think they're pointing in the same direction. And it's the story that matters here. So this slide gives you a bit of an idea, where the populations of Muslims are and how they're located with Australia. So as mentioned before, 25% of the global population, that's huge, really huge. And you can see those green dots is where the Muslim populations are around the world. And the biggest one is on our doorstep. So the opportunity is right here. Australia's neighbours, Indonesia, 230 million Muslims, India, 195, Pakistan, 200, Bangladesh, 150, Malaysia, 16, nearly 1 billion in terms of a market or markets. So, that's a real opportunity for the Australian business. This comes out of a similar report that you were reporting on before in terms of the sectors. Where is all the action? The action is in finance, and that's assets, that's money in the bank. Next comes food and beverage, then fashion, media and recreation, travel, pharmaceuticals, and cosmetics. So that's where the action is. In terms of trade, the top 5 exporters to the OIC is China, India, USA, Brazil, and Russia. We're not there yet, but we hope to be. The top 5 OIC importers are Saudi Arabia, UAE, Turkey, Indonesia, and Malaysia. And what are they trading in mainly? Food and beverage. And after that, pharmaceuticals. So the growth is, I think, astronomical. The growth in terms of a relationship between Australia and Muslim countries around trade and investment is huge. I think I'm on a unity ticket with Mohamed. The economy is roughly 4 trillion at the moment around the globe. That's AUD, growing to about 7 trillion in 2030. That's almost double. That's a lot of trade action. That's a lot of business action. That's a lot of consumer action. And what's driving that? Well, the populations of those Muslim countries, and guess what? They're young. Secondly, they're moving up. So the middle class is increasing. And so their disposable income is increasing. They've got to focus on natural health and safety, hygiene, and reliability. There's an increase in government regulations and trade agreements. So halal standards and halal rules and things like, and FTAs are starting to consolidate the importance of halal in the trade system. And finally, digital connectivity and e-commerce. I mean, that's huge. We did some presentations in New South Wales recently, and we're talking to the ASEAN society there. And, I asked, how many unicorns do you think came out of ASEAN in 2021? Hands go up, 4, 5, it's 21. It's huge. The activity over there is huge. And there's a lot of super app platforms which are now bringing all this together into one-stop shop trade and investment opportunities. This is a bit of, I suppose, the media recognition in Australia. The Muslim mum is the target of Aussie exporters going vegan, organic, and halal. The first Islamic bank was established, got its license, I think 2 months ago or something. Blackmores, the vitamins company, which are huge in ASEAN. They're now looking to target 1 billion consumers by 2025. And guess where the majority of those are? In Muslim countries. We've just signed an MOU between Austrade and the Halal Development Corporation. That's another facilitator, another enabler of activity between Australia and Muslim countries. Woolworths becoming the first supermarket to make their own brand, own brand halal food due to the demand. And I've read that in Coles and Woolworths and Aldi, supposedly 70 or 80% of their stock is in accordance with halal rules and regulations. So we're ready. This is some work that was done by the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which we were involved with in 2021, which was looking at the halal industry, and they're looking to encourage Australian SMEs and companies to get more involved in those markets across the world. In red meat, sorry, our top 10 export markets are there. And the Muslim country, Malaysia at the bottom, is number 10. When we look at beef exports, the top five markets are Japan, USA, China, South Korea, and Indonesia. And what they did is they looked at the largest untapped markets. And we've got Indonesia here, huge growth in beef, Malaysia, and Egypt. Okay. So that's one of our largest exports. And we're saying it's got direction into the Muslim countries. That's where our growth is. So why don't we go there? The challenges. We talk a lot to SMEs in Australia and across ASEAN, and both ways, two ways. There seems to be, not so much awareness of one another's opportunities. So we're trying to help with that. So I think more work can be done in Australia in terms of what the opportunities are with Muslim countries. And I think there's some work that we can do in Muslim countries about what Australia can support them with. Innovation. This area is ripe for new ways of thinking, of new solutions. And we think there's some answers to that. In terms of certification, you read complaints every now and then about, halal certification requirements that differ between countries. Well, that's understandable. Different politics, different cultures, different requirements, right? That's all okay. But is there a way of maybe streamlining that a bit to help, companies from other non-Muslim countries to be doing business there? And then there's the compliance. And I think Mohamed mentioned that before in terms of how do we ensure that companies are meeting halal requirements when they do business. So they're the four areas that we see as challenges. And on the right-hand side here, we're saying, here are a couple of practical initiatives that could be helpful. One is around global professional immersions, and that's something that my company provides, and we're doing it between here and ASEAN, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then around certification and compliance, we've had some interest from our Indonesian partners to look at a halal traceability project. And we'll talk about that in a moment as well. So in terms of activating growth, activating action between Australia and Muslim countries, we're encouraging people to not work in silos. Okay, so government officials working with business, with companies, working with business councils, working with universities, working together on solutions. The worst thing we can do is continue business as usual. The opportunity is too large. We want to grab it. So if we keep doing the same, very risky. What we're promoting is learning and working in teams across disciplines, across cultures, and across borders. So that's what our GPIs are doing. We're getting students and company people working together in teams, looking at new business thinking and coming up with new growth solutions. So here's a picture of one of the teams. They came from the US, from Malaysia, from Singapore, from Thailand, from Australia. They all came into a group as a team. We put them through a professional development program, which was looking at improving their meta skills, their power skills, and their professional skills. Those meta skills are around how to think, how to see opportunities and how to join dots and all that sort of capability thinking. Power skills around communicating with influence and being able to engage and talk with CEOs and be able to be influential. And then professional skills are around, being able to run like a consulting assignment. So these teams work together. They're working under the supervision of real international experts on real impactful projects for host organizations, which could be companies, or they could be governments, or they could be, NFPs or whatever. It's all online, it's all global, and they're all working together. So that's what I basically went through. These are the components, the skills immersion, this project immersion, which is typically around business strategy or international business development or policy and regulatory design. They're the three key areas that we're putting these groups of students and also employees within companies working in teams, working on projects in those three spaces. This has benefited the companies themselves because what they've got is recommendations for a strategy to go forward. So they've got something to work with. And for the people involved, the students or their staff, they've got some new skills that improves their career and their employability. So that was looking at awareness and innovation. This is looking at compliance and accreditation. So this is halal. What we're looking at here is beef exports from here to, let's say, Indonesia. Okay. Over here is the current sort of situation. Okay. We're talking to Meat Livestock Australia, and we're talking to the Department of Agriculture and other people. They're all saying that this is useful. Okay. But I've got to be very clear that we do have some very good traceability systems in Australia. It's when it gets across the border that things start to get a bit iffy. Okay. So they are all in support of this. So over here, it's a little bit disconnected. You know, the paperwork doesn't join necessarily. Okay. The cattle are traveling through. Okay. But the paperwork is not necessarily verifying all the way through. In Australia, not so bad. In other countries, not so good. Okay. So what we've designed over here, what we're looking to pilot is a blockchain solution. A blockchain solution. So we've got blockchain technology providers in Australia that have built systems already, and they're now taking them to the US, Canada. They're putting them into other products like medical cannabis and other things. What they're saying is they'd like to have a go at seeing if we can help with the halal traceability. So they're saying we have a platform already where these participants are all connected to the system, and even the certifying body can be connected to this system so that the certificates, as they go through the chain, can be followed. Okay? So this is very unique, and our Indonesian partners are very excited by this. What we can do now is trace from the farm right to the plate. And you can actually look up an app and see it on your phone. So this could be a farm, I don't know, casino in Australia, you know. We can put all the information about what was fed to that cow, what it was, you know, how it was grown, how it was fattened, all this can all be input to the system. And that can be traced all the way through to a restaurant in Indonesia, in Jakarta. And a consumer in Jakarta at the restaurant can go zap, and he gets it on his phone, all the information. So let's have a crack. Pull your phones out. I don't know if it's going to work from the screen, but what I can do is hand these out, and you can just
So something like that.
That's it?
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
Sorry, I gotta do mine first. I kind of took it. Isn't that cheating? It doesn't work for me.
Yes.
So you can see that it's Macca's Macca's beef, okay? So you could be in a restaurant in Jakarta and go like that, and it goes, and it gives you that information. And you can see, where it came from, what it was fed, what the key milestones were. So you can actually see the halal, we can actually put in there the milestones through the halal certification process, right? And you can see it, you can check. And I suppose it's what we're trying to do is, one of the things that through our research and our Indonesian partners is advising us is that, consumers having confidence. And I think Mohamed was talking about that before, having confidence in the certification. So what we can do now is provide that confidence, okay? And we can track all those parties through there, through the distributors, through the transport, through whatever. We can put it in here and you can check it. So each party along the supply chain can verify that it's in accordance with the halal standards that we require. We're excited by this. We're excited both by that and also our global professional immersions. I just finished by saying the halal industry is growing at an incredible rate and it's worth trillions. It represents a huge opportunity to Australian companies wanting to send product overseas, especially premium products. There's a growing middle class that is prepared to pay a premium to ensure that the provenance and the halal certification of quality Aussie products is verified. There are challenges, but if we work together to address some of these challenges, educate Australian companies, Australia could be well positioned to play a major role in the halal industry. We're also very keen, very open to collaboration. So if you'd like to talk to us about both of these things, the global professional immersions and also this halal certification pilot that we're investigating at the moment, we'd be very happy to talk to you. So thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Now we'll move to Q&A session. First, I'd like to remind our online audience, and if you have questions, please write them in the Q&A box. Our moderator today is Mr. Mohamed Naim bin Mohamed Aziz. So over to you, Aziz, to moderate.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ونصره وعلاه أما بعد. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, His Excellencies, guests of honor, our speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, I would like to thank to the organizer for the invitations. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Mohamed Naim Mohamed Aziz. I'm the Halal Attaché, the first secretary from the High Commission of Malaysia. My role actually, a little bit brief about myself. My role actually here in Australia is to monitor and to work with the Department of Agriculture, Fishery and Forestry, DFAT, in terms of monitoring the meat export to Malaysia. So since I believe Malaysia, we have a very close connection and good collaboration with Australia in terms of meat importing. So that is my roles. And here, actually, in Australia, the government put a very good effort in terms of giving an assurance for halal, where the government of Australia developed a very specific requirements and also the SOPs and protocols in terms of meat export. So we can see that the growth of halal industry here is very, very comprehensive, and even the demand for halal product also very high. So back to before we further proceed with the Q&A, I will open the floor for the Q&A, as well as our online participant also can further your question, and then our organizer will choose. We have another 20 minutes, so make it utilized for the next 30 minutes, inshallah. Before that, little bit about our speakers touched already about the potential, the growth of halal industry, but I think just to share what experience I have, because my background, I have 15 years already in halal industry. Since I joined the Department of Islamic Development Malaysia, JAKIM, which one of the authorities in Malaysia who control and develop the halal standards, the halal protocol, and even myself also involved in developing the halal standards and halal protocol. So the halal concept actually is very unique and very comprehensive, as mentioned by our speakers just now. It's involved the assurance from the very beginning, which is from the farm until to the table. So the whole concept of what the whole supply chains actually must be complied with halal. That is the rules. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Al Quran, وَكُلُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا, which means, or you who believe, eat whatever on earth which is halal and good. But bear in mind, all halal good or all halal product can be considered good and safe and quality. But not all good product can easily be considered as halal. So then, from that command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the scholars, the authorities, the stakeholders, they put their initiative to elaborate what is the command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then we develop the halal standards, the halal protocols, the halal policies, which everyone nowadays can have that one, can be easily have the halal standards. You can browse very easy, and then the industry also can implement. Now, from there, the industries open their eyes, and the industries get involved. From the very beginning, from food sectors, that is expand to the other sectors, including cosmetic, pharmaceuticals, logistics, and other sectors as well. So that's actually the very brief and also the ideas that I have based on my experience. Since 2006, I'm involved with the halal industry. I'm one of the halal auditor who conduct the inspection and audits for our domestic and also, and as well as the international industries. All right. So I will open the floor now for the question and answer. We have our three panelists here, so they are ready to respond to your question. Please.
Hi, I'm Sarah from Indonesia Project. So I'm just curious, how much cost would it add to go from non-halal to halal? For example, to go from non-halal meat to halal, or from non-halal pot of shampoo to a halal pot of shampoo. Any estimate?
Okay, please proceed.
Short answer, don't know. But that's, when you look at research, and as I said before, Woolworths and Coles and 80% of their stock, 75 to 80% of the stock is already halal compliant. That what they're saying to business land, to companies is, it doesn't take that much. You know, if you're not using alcohol, for example, if you're not using, you know, fats from that sort of, if that's going on, then the transition is minimal. But then you, as we've talked about, you then need to get into the halal certification process. Okay. And that does cost a little bit, but, you know, have a look at the size of the opportunity. So
I might add a bit on that one. So for big companies, it's cheap, but then you will get huge benefit. For example, like Sushi King, they decided, I mentioned before, in 2020, they decided to go halal. For them, yeah, it's a matter of you need to submit your application to check-in, and then check-in will do the audit, blah, blah, blah. It's the same also in the Indonesian context, and I think in other countries too. You need to submit your application, and then the halal agency will then see whether you're eligible with all the ingredients. And with the Sushi King, they mentioned that, look, we go halal, and it's proven that we get more benefit by going halal, because our non-Muslim customers, they are still with us because they feel like there's no difference. So it's, and the other thing is for the cost, for big companies, it's cheap, but for micro, small and medium enterprises, that's still, especially for micro, that's still quite expensive.
and if I could just add to that, because I totally agree. Large companies got deep pockets, right? So the transition is, you know, it becomes a play. You know, will I get a return on investment? The big thing that we need to do is focus on SMEs, not necessarily micros, but SMEs. And we need to try and develop regulatory requirements and regulatory systems, which includes halal, that supports SMEs being able to comply in a way that is sustainable for them, because they are the opportunity, they are the growth. That's where the jobs are, that's where the economy is. So, and I think that backs up what you were talking about before in your speech.
Thank you. Next question, yeah. Please.
Thank you, panel. It was excellent. Robert Hage, I'm the Trade State Advisor in the ACT. I'm interested in the panel thoughts about where the services sector can capture halal industries. I mean, obviously, a lot of us talk about food and beverage, but where do you think the opportunities are for the services sector?
Firstly, if you look at the tourism industry, as the F&B delivered to the hotel, but then you look at the tourism industry, the service sector, the aviation sector. Tourism is massive. It's worth over $200 billion to the halal industry itself. That's full service from go to woe, just about. And then you look at other sectors as well. It's about not only just the F&B, it's about the multiplier effect of halal itself. So, for example, apps, as an example, phone apps. How many halal phone apps are we seeing every day? So many, you know. So it's for us as an industry, for us as the halal industry, we must be able to complement the growth of other economic development. We must be able to customize products and services to where the growth industries are. But the thing about it is, and I really think it's very important, we lack certain skills and training in those growth sectors. Sometimes we use the wrong people in the wrong positions. So if the service sectors is things such as artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing, the future-focused industries, renewable energy, Islamic finance is huge. That's a massive service sector that they're providing from a Sharia-compliant Islamic finance perspective. But what we must do is lift the bar in our workforce. That will be the thrust. A competent workforce will make or break the halal industry. And I believe we're still a little bit behind in terms of regulation globally. We have 3,500 certifiers, if not more, correct me if I'm wrong. And we need to actually find a regulation. You know, if you go to a course, certain countries you need to be regulatory compliant with to provide financial advice. But as long as you're regulatory complied from a non-conventional way to provide financial advice, you can also provide financial advice on a Sharia fund as well. This is in certain Western economies. Whereas we need to lift the standard if we're going to understand how we're going to drive these service sectors, like tourism. You know, the person running the hotel needs to understand and go through a course on what's right and what's wrong. And through these courses, we retrain, and this is the way you'll see the service industry and the halal industry grow, I believe.
We have a question from
Yes.
the online audience here from Tom Worthington. Is there a role for specialist halal innovation hubs in Australia, or will the general ones be sufficient? As an example, the ACT government and Canberra's university set up the Canberra Innovation Network. There is now a specialist site for a security hub as well. Is there a room for a halal hub?
I personally think there's room for an Islamic development economy for Australasia in particular. The UAE has an Islamic development economy in Dubai that's been thriving, very robust. They sent a delegation approximately 5 years ago. There is nothing wrong about having an innovation hub, but you've got to think a bit bigger than that. And having an Australasian Islamic development economy will work very well. The Dubai Islamic development economy provides B2B matching, provides training, provides introduction on Sharia compliant. So this is where I see the innovation moving into.
I support that. I think it could be useful. I think also what we are doing and what we're really keen on doing is getting Muslims and non-Muslims working together on real solutions. And I think, you know, it's solutions that can be used by businesses, by governments, by universities, for example. So they're working on together in a group under supervision, and that could support your halal center. But I think what's really important for us and what we're seeing and what we're experiencing is getting the different, cultures and working across borders, coming together, working on real solutions that can deliver value. So.
I think working together with universities is very important. Like in Indonesia and Malaysia, for example, many universities, they have halal research centers, and behind that halal research centers, there are brains, and through that halal research centers, they many of these scholars, they can come up with innovations, halal innovations, for example, like a pen to detect whether certain ingredients has ethanol or has porcine, so that kind of stuff, and that comes from the halal research centers within the university. If in Australia we have that one, halal research centers in some universities, then that will be great. That can even boost the development of halal industry in this country.
Yeah. One more online from Loka. I heard that not all halal certifications are recognized and accepted by all Islamic countries. This makes trade difficult. Would you have any advice to exporters who are trying to get their products into multiple markets?
Yes, this is a challenge. We see it through the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, even within the MENA region. Each country has a different form of certification process. Yeah. And we have to respect each country's certifying process as well. We know that, for example, Malaysia has a quite strict process. Saudi Arabia has a different process to some of the other MENA region countries. And this is something that I think moving forward, the industry needs to look at and needs to cooperate with as well. Again, we have to be religiously compliant. That's the first rule, to ensure, because this will protect the industry and the credibility of the industry as well. It just all depends on what market they want to export to. So if they want to export to Malaysia, they will have certain requirements in halal certification. If they want to export to the growth markets in the MENA region, that would be there as well.
Yeah, under OIC, there's this CIMIC, and CIMIC also issued some standards already, but CIMIC just founded in 2010, and by then, other countries under this OIC already issued their own halal standards. So then that makes this one is a bit tricky to follow one halal standard in Malaysia. There is this MS, Malaysia issued MS, in Indonesia, Indonesia issued HAS. And I think Ustaz Naim can explain this one even better than me because he is involved in this one.
Can I just make a comment? So yes, there are differences, and that's causing a few dramas. And as I said in my presentation, we need to respect, the cultures and the religions, etc., etc. Some people in government have been calling for mutual recognition agreements and things like that to sort of help facilitate getting some sort of core that we can then meet, okay, and then add-ons after that. But I keep coming back to this makes it difficult for SMEs to do business across borders. And if we're fair income about, helping that happen, because SMEs will drive the economy, will drive the growth. If we're going to get them to do it, we've got to look at how we can facilitate some of that. So that's all I say.
Additional to that, talking about this MIC initiative that they have developed their own agreements to come up with at least a mutual understanding especially among the OIC's country, to have one standards, one directions. But then I would agree as well. Of course, like Malaysia, Indonesia, and other countries as well. They already have developed their own standards and being implemented, and even since years and years before already. So agree, this is the challenge. And to come across on that, I think the mutual recognition is one of the best solutions. So country to country approach. So this is, of course, industry to have to agree with that and to comply with that requirements. We have to respect each country regulation, each country standards, each country experts. Can we have another 2 more questions from the floor before we end up our Q&A session? Very quick. Yeah, very quick question. 2 more questions, please.
Yes. Hi, Ravi Kish from IDL Australia. I have a question. You talk about certification, you talk about the halal industry. I've been involved in the halal industry since 2007, and we came a long way. I really appreciate all the information you shared today. A great technology, the blockchain technology, trying to introduce to Professor McKenna. Mohamed, thank you very much. Dr. Nisa, also thank you very much. The question I would like to ask is in regards to FDI. We have just opened up a consultancy business in the MENA region, trying to help Australian businesses expand overseas and trying to basically give them a better service, trying to give them a better understanding of the region. So in the halal industry, they require a lot of FDI. According to Deloitte, the agribusiness requires $12.5 billion annually to basically keep on growing steadily between 2020 and 2030. Now, what is your organizations as ACI, as your organization working towards basically driving more FDIs into Australia to help Australian businesses grow and better service the halal industry?
Firstly, I would say that's a wonderful question, Rabia. It's a very good question. I must say that firstly, there has been significant interest, I can tell you, from particularly the GCC countries for FDI investment in Australia. However, we have some roadblocks. The first is that we need free trade agreements. There's several issues. Australia also needs to be competitive on a global front as well at the same time. So if we look at countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar in particular, and Kuwait, they've applied to heavily and are currently investing in Australia. So Saudi Arabia has acquired farms, meat processing plant. We just had the Minister of Industry visit a halal food manufacturing plant in his recent visit in Western Sydney. So the effort is being made. The recognition of Australia's brand is second to none. However, Rabia, as you would know and appreciate in yourself being involved in our industry, FDI investment is a lot more complicated than what it was in the past. And undoubtedly, I think that Australia can be a source of quality food, not the food bowl of the world, but quality food, because the Australian brand is so well recognised in the GCC region from a food perspective. From a service perspective, we're also so well recognised as well. But from the food perspective, we need to look at things such as double taxation. We need to consider things such as free trade agreements, because the world's becoming a lot more competitive. Markets are growing at a rapid rate. If you look at the GCC countries, within a 6-hour radius, they can capture several billion people. They can capture the fastest growing economies with one of the fastest growing middle classes in the world. So this is the competition that Australia faces as well. We face other markets that are sort of opening up a lot more in the engagement process of attracting FDI into this particular sector. So things such as FTAs, double taxation, if we want to look deeply, we have to address those issues as well. But there is no doubt the interest is there. There is no doubt. And as I mentioned, obviously when you talk about FDI, it has to be competitive and it has to be profitable and it has to be sustainable, one of the three. And these companies are looking at Australia because of the good relationship that the region's had with Australia. Because historically, Australia has had a wonderful relationship with the MENA region, particularly the GCC countries. And we've seen significant inflows come in. But look, if we go beyond just Rabia, just on food, if we go on services, if you look at the investments made in infrastructure projects, in other projects as well. So we have to look at it really from a holistic perspective. We have to broaden our horizon. It's an excellent question.
I'll just make a quick comment on that. I agree with a lot of what you just said. I suppose my focus is between ASEAN and Australia. ASEAN is highly competitive. You know, every country is investing into ASEAN, and ASEAN people are looking to invest around the world. And totally agree with what Mohamed just said. It's a competition now. And we need to realise, I'm talking about Australia, it needs to realise we're in a competition for investment funds. And that competition is not just about, you know, the profit coming out of a farm or something like that. It's got to do with a whole range of different things about how we do business and how we live together, including visas and a whole range of other things to make it work. So other countries are making it work, and we need to realise that we're in a competition now for FDI.
Last word from Dr. Eva, maybe before we conclude our Q&A.
Oh, yeah. Halal industry is, I mean, we are talking about a standard and certificate. Halal industry is not only about governance, halal governance. When we talk about halal governance, we mean certificate, and also we're talking about standard, but it's also about the development of industry itself. It's about innovation. That's why the questions before from our audience online, it was great. It's we need to think about how to bring this innovation, how to come up with more innovation, and it would be, again, it would be wonderful to have Halal Research Center in Australia, to boost the the development of our industry in this country.
All right, I think we are running out of time. We have very fruitful discussion today. So thank you once again to everyone. I pass over to the.
Thank you, moderators, speakers, and all the participants. Sorry, we have to conclude now. But before that, I understand that His Excellency Siswo has something for the speakers. So over to you, Siswo.
Thank you very much. So on behalf of the OIC, I'd like to provide some traditional gift from Indonesia. A plate that's the mementos from today. Thank you very much. Thanks. Yeah. Halal batik.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you.
Oh, you're good.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So perhaps we can have photograph together. Yeah. For family photos.
Maybe speakers. One, two, and three. 1, 2, and 3. Oh, that's black, black, black. 1, 2, and 3.